Hello, everyone. Hey, I hope you've been enjoying me putting, YouTube videos up on this feed. I can still see people listening/watching, which is awesome. So I really appreciate that. This is, again, I'm just going to, at least for the time being, be using this feed for just pretty much anything. This is a little radio interview that I did very recently because I was asked by someone at 3AW, which is a radio station that I've worked with in the past, but I was asked by a producer there to come on the afternoon show with Tony Moclair to talk about the growing or continued popularity of podcasts, and particularly in relation to political figures like Trump and Harris going on podcasts, like Trump going on Joe Rogan and Kamala Harris going on Call Her Daddy, and why I think that those things are happening. Like, why is it good for a political figure or presidential candidate to go on a comedy podcast? Do you know what I mean? And yeah, I was asked to comment on that. And so, yeah, did a 5-minute chat on radio, which was awesome. And I thought you guys might want to hear it. I was on the phone and the line is actually pretty bad. I was kind of disappointed when I listened back at the quality of my phone, but you can still make out everything I'm saying. So yeah, enjoy this and yeah, check out all of my stuff. Links in description. Thanks, guys.
A man behind an extremely successful podcast and many others, Mike Liberale. He's a podcaster and producer of podcasts and the man behind Hamish and Andy's. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Tony. First time, long time. Stoked to be on with you.
Well, I'm delighted to have you on, Mike. What do you make of this? You're younger than me, so you are, as I said, you're neck deep in the whole podcast phenomenon. The fact that it's going to move the dial in a presidential election, that must make you excited.
Yeah, I think this is really the direction that we're going now, where it's more valuable for a president or a presidential candidate to go on a podcast rather than more sort of traditional mainstream avenues. And Trump recently actually went on another podcast from an American comedian named Theo Von. So this is not his first foray into going onto these big American podcasts.
3 hours is what's required for you to sit down with Joe Rogan, and you can cover literally anything in that time. There used to be a time where being off message or, let's say, an unguarded admission about something could ruin a presidential career. That's not really the case anymore, is it, Mike?
No, well, that's it. And I think here's the thing, you asked the question, who's sitting down to listen to Joe Rogan for 3 or 4 hours? But the answer is a lot of people are, and a lot of people are building these relationships, for better or worse, with these podcasters, in a way that they have a trust in them that they don't necessarily have from traditional TV and radio. And that's why I think people like Trump, Kamala Harris, all of these people are going to these avenues to get their message out there because they know that they have this dedicated and captive audience who will listen.
Well, the reason I guess I asked that question is because Call Her Daddy has some, what you would call edgy material on it, and yet she sat down because a cohort of voters that she was after listens to that particular podcast, and it didn't do her any damage. So is it because the audience is so targeted? Is that why it would be? I mean, in the case of Trump going on this podcast, they're saying it's because a lot of men listen or males listen to because they can directly go after a segment of the voting population that they need. Would that be why, Mike?
I think that's it. And someone like, I believe her name's Alex Cooper, who does the Call Her Daddy podcast. Yeah, she has this devoted audience of generally young women, and if Kamala Harris wants to reach those people, especially in a place like the States where it isn't even compulsory to vote, if she can get a section of that audience to go out and vote when they otherwise wouldn't have, then that is a fantastic get for her that is well worth her time investment to go and do that.
It's a hypothetical question, Mike, but if somebody wanted to come on to the Hamish and Andy podcast, which reaches a hell of a lot of people, would you have them on, a political candidate?
I don't think I'm the right person to answer that question because I'm not the executive producer on the show.
Gotcha.
I'm just a producer.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, I think it just comes down to the host of the podcast and what kind of message that they want to get across. I mean, some might say if you have one side of politics on your podcast, you'd also want to get the other side. But some might have, a very clear idea of the way that they are voting and they might want to push that. So I think it just comes down to what the host's values are, I suppose. I think for something that's more comedic, like, say, the Hamish and Andy podcast, they're not necessarily steering into politics anyway. Yep. So I think they probably, I don't know the answer to that, but I think a lot of comedy podcasts probably wouldn't do that.
It'd be a great way of humanising a politician who might have a kind of stiff reputation, if you like. But before I let you go, it's a question without notice to you, Mike Liberale, podcaster and podcaster producer and a producer on the Hamish and Andy podcast. 546 million podcast listeners worldwide. Why is it so popular as a format?
I think a lot of people, Tony, say that podcasts are the AM radio for millennials. And I think that is it. It's company, it's time investment. And I think people just want to feel like they have someone there with them to listen to. And I think that's great.
Really enjoyed our chat, Mike. Mike Liberale, podcaster and podcast producer. Thanks for your time.
Thanks so much, mate.